guys, and welcome to the next episode of Learning Rwandan Sign Language. In the last episode, we looked at how to tell people which country you're from, so to tell people your nationality. And in this episode, it's a little bit shorter. We're going to talk about how to say which region of Rwanda you're from. So we're going to go through some of the best known towns and cities in Rwanda, using the signs that we've learned in the Rwandan Sign Language Dictionary from 2009. So something that you need to know before we begin is that in Rwanda, many cities have got two names. So many of the really big well-known cities are known by the name that they were known by before 1994. And then they're often referred to by a different name today. And the name that they're referred to by today is usually the same name as the district. So before 94, you had Butare, and nowadays Butare is more commonly called Hue. But it gets a little bit confusing, especially if you're coming from abroad, because Hue is the same name as the district. So when you say, I'm going to Hue, it's not always sometimes clear if you're specifically going to the town of Hue or if you're going to the general region. It can also be very difficult for tourists because, for example, Gisenyi, which is a town in northern Rwanda, a very big tourist destination. Everybody loves to go to Gisenyi for a weekend, and often you will hear people just calling it Gisenyi because, you know, that's what people call it, Gisenyi. But nowadays it is technically Rubavu. And so when you go to the bus station, if you're going to somewhere like Nyabugogo to go up to Gisenyi for a weekend, you'll be looking for the bus that says Gisenyi, and often it will say Rubavu. And if you don't know that Rubavu is Gisenyi, it gets a bit complicated. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the old name and give the new name if there is a new name that people are often using. But for either name, the sign remains the same. Now, just before we dive into the different cities, we're going to cover how to say north, south, east and west. So we already know the sign for Rwanda, which is beating your chest like a gorilla. But within Rwanda, you've got northern Rwanda, southern Rwanda, east and west. So let's get that out of the way. Now, north is Amajyaruguru, which basically literally means the direction of the head. So that's easy to remember. And what we're going to do is we're going to make the N hand shape, and we're just going to go up towards the head. North. North. Now, if you don't know what hand shapes are, go and check out the end of the first episode in this series, because there I teach you how to make all the different hand shapes. So when I tell you to make a hand shape, you know what you're doing with your hand. South is Amajepfo, which literally means the direction of the belly. So Amajepfo. You might remember when we did the sign for South Africa, we said Africa Yepfo. So it's the same root of the word there, Africa Yepfo. So for this, we're making the S hand shape, and we're just going to go south. So N for north, S for south. Now, Iburasirazuba means east, and Zuba is the word for sun. So you can kind of guess that Iburasirazuba means the land or the region where the sun rises. So to me, Iburasirazuba sounds a bit like the borough where the sun rises, because in the UK we have boroughs rather than districts, so it sounds like the borough where the sun rises. So that's how I remember that. And you might be noticing a little bit of a pattern here. So we had N for north, we had S for south, we're going to have E for east. And E is just like S, but it's slightly more open. So like that. So we're going east. And you can probably guess what west is. We're going to have the W and we're going west. So Burungerazuba means the land where the sun sets. So again, the word Zuba at the end there, that's where it sets. This is where it rises, east and west. So north, south, east and west. So somebody asks you, you know, Rwanda, where are you from? You can say, well, I come from Rwanda in the north, or I come from Rwanda in the west. Easy as that. So before I jump into the rest of the cities, I'm just going to give you two places that most people are probably going to want to sign. The first one, of course, is Kigali, because most of us are living in Kigali. And that is just flashing your hand, open, closed, twice above the right shoulder. Kigali. 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 And one way of remembering that is it's like the flashing lights of the city. You've got the big city, it's the flashing lights of the city. That's Kigali. And the other one that you might want to know is over the west side of the country, we've got Lake Kivu, and a lot of people are going there on their weekends and for holidays. Lake Kivu, you're just going to make the sign of water like this, like waves. And after that, you're going to slightly cup your right hand. It's not a full C shape, just slightly cupped is fine, like you're whispering to somebody. And you're just going to take it from right to left, so that. So Lake Kivu, you've got the water, and then you've got the hand moving. Lake Kivu. Lake Kivu. Now, we talked in the first video about how to ask, where are you from? And where is a very formal way of asking the question where. So if you see somebody with one hand doing this or two hands doing this, they're usually asking you where something is or where you're from. That is perfectly normal, acceptable way of doing it. So, if they say like, where are you from? You might say, oh, I'm from the UK or I'm from Rwanda. But you might also just see a little bit more of a vague sort of sign, which is sort of, oh, right, this. So just pointing at sort of this kind of, it means area. So, if you say, oh, I'm from Rwanda, then you might go, all right, whereabouts? Whereabouts in Rwanda? And that's when you can tell people, oh, well, the west, Lake Kivu. Or perhaps I'm from Rwanda. All right, where? Kigali. So that's how you could respond. So let's dive in with the other major cities. So Butare, Hue, which I mentioned before, is the major university town of Rwanda. That's where the University of Rwanda is based, and there's a huge student population there. So it's a little bit south of Kigali. Very easy sign. You're taking your B hand shape, flat to the right of your body, palm facing left, and you're just bringing it down. So, Butare, Butare, or Hue. Hue. So the name changes, the sign remains the same, but that's Hue. So the next one is Byumba. Now, Byumba is a little bit north, and it is such a beautiful district. It's major hills, beautiful hills. I recently went on a motorbike ride up to Byumba. That video will come out soon, and you can just see hills for miles and miles. It's beautiful, which is why Byumba is linked to the hills. So you're making a hill and then you're drawing a flat line to the right. So Byumba, Byumba, Byumba. So right down in the very, very south of Rwanda, we've got a place called Cyangugu, which is also called Rusizi. So Rusizi, Cyangugu, most of the time you will hear people still calling it Cyangugu. So Cyangugu, we're taking our left arm flat like this, and we're going to rest our elbow on the back of our left palm and make a C hand shape, a full C. And then we're going to just rock it back and forth. So, Cyangugu, Cyangugu, or Rusizi. Rusizi. Next up, we've got Gikongoro. Not to be confused with Gikondo, which is an area of Kigali. So Gikongoro is down in the south of Rwanda. And we're just going to make a Y hand shape, and we're going to tap our little finger to our chin. So Gikongoro, Gikongoro, Gikongoro. Just south of Kigali, we've got Gitarama. Now, Gitarama is almost always called Muhanga today. So it's more common to hear Muhanga than it is to hear Gitarama. Now, we're just going to take a 5-hand shape, very loose, so slightly crooked, slightly bent, and just rest that against your chin. And then our hand is moving down, it's becoming straight fingers, and we're making that area sign. So, Gitarama, Gitarama, or Muhanga, Muhanga, Muhanga. Now we're moving on to Kibungo, which is down in the southeastern side of Rwanda, right on the border with Tanzania. And to make this sign, we've got a flat left hand, and we're going to make a full C shape with our right hand and turn that upside down. So the C goes against the side of your palm, and we're just going to move it back and forth like this. So, Kibungo, Kibungo. Next up is one of my favourite places in the whole of Rwanda. It's Kibuye, and Kibuye is right on the side of Lake Kivu, and it's beautiful, stunningly beautiful, wonderful place to go for boat rides. And Kibuye is now also referred to as Kironge, which is of course the name of the district. Kironge, Kibuye, people tend to use interchangeably. So we've got the left flat hand again, and right hand palm facing up, and we're just going to tap them together. So, Kibuye, Kibuye, or Kironge, Kironge. Now, Kigali we've already covered. Can you remember what it is? Give me the sign if you can remember. 3, 2, 1, Kigali. The flashing lights of the city. Kigali, Kigali. Now this one is kind of an interesting one. It's Kigali Ngali. Now, way back when, there used to be a district around the outskirts of Kigali city called Kigali Ngali. And I think it was redistributed somewhere around 2006. They redrew the boundaries of the different districts, and I don't think Kigali Ngali technically still exists. But when this dictionary was made back between 2008 to 9, it still made it into the dictionary because it was still being used. And I think maybe people might still use it today as a way of saying that they live on the outskirts or the suburbs of Kigali. So the sign for it is Kigali, followed by your fist with an extended finger coming up to your forehead. So Kigali Ngali, Kigali Ngali. Now this sign means village. So you are literally saying Kigali village. So Kigali Ngali, Kigali village. So I live on the outskirts or the rural area of Kigali. Kigali Ngali. Nyamata. Now Nyamata is a small town just south of Kigali, and it's very well known. It's got quite a prominent memorial site there. So often people coming to visit Kigali will go to visit Nyamata and Enterama memorials, which are right next to each other, about 35 minutes south of Kigali. The word Nyamata is related to Amata, and that is the word for milk. So Nyamata was a region that was really known for its cattle and its milk production. So we're going to take a 5-hand shape, down like this, loosely down like this, against the right cheek, and it's moving up and down twice. So, Nyamata, Nyamata, Nyamata. Now again, this is one of my favourite places in Rwanda. If you're coming to visit, I highly recommend that you head south to Nyanza. Now Nyanza has the old King's Palace, the Mwami Palace, which is a reconstruction of the type of palace that the ancient kings of Rwanda used to live in. It's definitely my favourite museum in Rwanda, and I highly recommend popping down to see it. Now, it's a bit of a complicated sign. We're going to start with our flat right hand touching just below our lips, so on our chin. Now, our hand is going to move down. It's going to come up to an O shape, and then it's going to go straight down. So it's a little bit complicated. Probably helps to watch it sideways. So down, up to an O, and down. So Nyanza or Nyanza, Nyanza. So not the easiest one, but you will get there in time. Just keep practicing. And the final one that we've got is Ruhengeri. Now, Ruhengeri is gorilla country. If you're coming to Rwanda to see the gorillas, you will be going to Ruhengeri. But today, it is almost always referred to as Musanze. So you're more likely to hear Musanze than you are to hear Ruhengeri. The sign for this one is an R hand shape. And the R hand shape is coming down to a flat left hand, back of a flat left hand. And as it comes down, it's changing to an X. And it's just going to scrape the back of the left hand twice. So a bit like Nyanza, this is not the easiest one to do, but you'll get there in time. So R, down to an X, and scrape twice. So Ruhengeri, 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 or more commonly, Musanze, Musanze, Musanze. Right, so going through this list, I have noticed that I can't seem to find Gisenyi or Rubavu, which I mentioned at the beginning of the video is kind of a bit of a tourist destination in the northwest of Rwanda, up on Lake Kivu. I might have missed it, but I've gone through the dictionary a couple of times. I can't see it. Maybe it's just missing. So if you know what the sign is, maybe you could link it below or just describe it. This is why we need the dictionary. It's been so long since I worked with the Rwanda National Union of the Deaf that a lot of the signs have just gone from my head, and that's why the dictionary is so important and so helpful. But I will leave you with one bonus sign, and this is one that I do remember. It's always stuck with me for some reason. In Kigali, the oldest part of Kigali is an area called Nyamirambo, and Nyamirambo is the Muslim quarter of the city, and the sign for Nyamirambo is this. Nyamirambo, 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 okay, Nyamirambo. It's something to do with either lifting the veil or part of the Muslim prayer ceremony. I'm not entirely sure what the exact reference is, but I think it is actually the sign for Muslim as well. So that would kind of go together because it is the Muslim quarter, so the sign for the quarter relating to Islam would make sense. So Nyamirambo. So in the last video we learned how to ask somebody what their nationality is, and we learned how to ask people, you know, where are you from, and to give our country, so the UK or America or Rwanda. But in this video, we've also learned to ask somebody, you know, sort of which area are you from? So how can we put this together in a sentence? Well, for example, I could ask, you know, what's your nationality? And you might say, oh, Rwandan. And I might say, oh, whereabouts? And you could say, West, Lake Kivu. Or we could say, oh, where are you from? Rwanda. Okay, whereabouts? And you might be saying north, Byumba. So one other sign I'm going to give you is the sign for live, and that's the L hand shape against the bottom of the right hip with the finger facing forward, index finger forward, and just coming up, live. So Butari was down, live is up, live. So somebody might ask you, live where? And you could say, me, Kigali. Or they might say, live where? And you might say, Nyanza. So that's how you can ask somebody where they're from and where they live. And that's how you can tell somebody where you're from and where you live. Now, I've got to cut this video now because it's starting to rain pretty heavily. And I'm not too sure if you can still hear me. So I hope that's been really useful. And I shall see you in the next one.